Let's get into AI compute at warp speed today. We'll be breaking down a little bit of where decentralized AI compute power is going to be coming from, how it's going to be integrated into the blockchain, all of that good stuff. You guys are going to love it. It is going to be great. Let's just jump right into it today. I want to bring in two guests, and of course that is Daniil and David Liberman coming in from, of course, you guys know it as Gonka AI. How are you guys?
Doing great, Paul. Nice day today.
Let's jump in. I was up on your website and a little bit about what you guys are doing. First of all, a lot of partnerships, key correlations to what's going on in the AI space. Obviously, your statement here, AI compute is the new currency. This is something we've been following for a while, along with a lot of different projects that look at decentralized compute as one of the major things that could lead the AI revolution. David, let's start with you. Can you give me kind of an insight as to what Gonka is really trying to do here?
Gonka is a decentralized community of hardware providers who jointly inspired to create one of the biggest computational networks around the world. You know, we all hear about this massive hyperscalers projects like Stargate or Colossus from XAI, when just one organization built a million GPU data center to supercharge the future of AI. And we believe that it is really important to create an alternative when smaller players around the world can join forces and be competitive with those big organizations.
We've seen a few companies that have been fairly successful in doing this. Some, a company like Render, if you look at their compute and what they're doing around graphics and kind of the innovation on the creator side, obviously the general use case for AI tool sets is going to be continuing to ramp up. Daniil, if we can kind of follow along what David was talking about, the decentralized idea, smaller players creating a bigger pie for AI compute, what is the threshold for someone or some platform to be able to utilize Gonka?
So in case of Gonka, we, from the very beginning, aimed to build a platform for the largest available models. Like as long as we're using the open source models, anything which is open source can be ran on top of our network hardware, and therefore the entry level of hardware is quite high. We're talking about high-end NVIDIA GPUs, and in the future some other producers like ASICs and maybe AMD and more chips will be produced and available on the market, but those are going to be professional chips, like mainly with higher amount of shared memory, and bandwidth of the memory should be high as well. So something which can run the latest version of DeepSeek or Llama or the version of open source from OpenAI and Google, and in the future some even larger models.
Interesting. So this is in a point of growth. I was looking at the Binance story here. Gonka's AI network sees significant surge in computing power. This course was just here recently published. One thing that was interesting to me is the capacity here. First of all, how are you guys able to see this kind of capacity growth? Is this how long have you guys been doing this? What has been the path to get to this level for you guys?
The network launched just recently in August, late August last year. So we are actually amazed of the size of the community, which grew around the protocol. And you're right, like 10,000 H100 GPUs.
H100 equivalent.
It's a big data center already right now, just in 4 months. So you're right that this protocol is built on the experience which crypto industry already managed to demonstrate through all these years. Few people look at Bitcoin as data center, but it's actually the largest data center in the world. Bitcoin, in terms of the compute power, comprised from data centers together, accumulating 23 gigawatts of power.
Okay.
It's more than Google Cloud, Amazon Cloud, Microsoft Cloud combined. You see, it's so amazing of what people can build together is the community. And then you're right, there were other projects like Filecoin built one of the biggest storage capacity in the world. And then Render built this beautiful tool for artists to use this compute power around the world to make their movies or cartoons. So for AI, it was an obvious step that we need to make the same. And we need to use this principle, which called proof of work, when you actually, every participant, they prove that they have the capacity, and through that, they participate. And this model previously showed this enormous potential to build the large infrastructure. And we believed that the same can be repeated with AI. And when we launched it,
Okay, so when we launched, it was just a belief, and we launched with only 64 GPUs and six participants in total who just believed in this and launched this. And then we never expected to have such a growth. The growth was like 4 times huge for the first 3 months, and comparable in the month 4. Now we're like 5 months from the start, having 10,000 GPUs. We only expected to have it like maybe in 4 or 5 months from now in the best case scenario. So we're like twice faster than our best dreams.
I'm looking here that you guys are currently supporting 5 different inference models. This is since the launch just 3 months ago. The usage of these inference now 100 million tokens per epoch. So is this, how is this going to scale? Is this going to scale at that kind of growth in this short a time? Or is this kind of, well, we're going to see this amount of growth because it's just starting to seed the network? Explain what this is going to look like in the 18 months.
So if this protocol will be able to repeat trajectory which we've seen in this other projects in the past, which we've seen with Bitcoin infrastructure, for example, it should reach gigawatts of power through the next years. And from this perspective, it's aimed to become the alternative to these big players. That's why if the protocol works, it will bring millions of GPUs and then even more advanced equipment, which in the industry called ASICs, but ASICs which will be targeted for AI compute. And in this, and from this moment, the growth can be even faster. That's what we seen with these previous protocols. So we tend to believe that it's just the beginning. It's definitely hard to say, as Daniil mentioned, that it was a really great surprise for us that community managed to build so much in this short period of time. But looking at the protocols of the past, we actually do believe that it is possible to build something even greater, both from compute perspective, but then also from the usage perspective, that it can be billions and dozens of billions of AI words, tokens generated daily. And in this case, it will be able to serve through developers community. It will be able to serve million people in kind of ChatGPT-like experience.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to concern yourself as we're recording. These centralized systems continue to show outages. Decentralized system, little different game, which is kind of unique in itself. When you look at the ability to grow, and obviously we've seen networks like this in the past, some have grown very fast, some have kind of grown and then stalled. First of all, what are you guys going to have to do to kind of make this version of Gonka, the AI, or maybe the Bitcoin, I should say, of AI? What would be the key steps here, Daniil, that you have to do to kind of make this happen?
As you rightly mentioned, the other part of the equation is usage, like how many millions of AI tokens being processed by the network. And the usage comes comes from the developers. So our network, the network which we built, Gonka AI, is a protocol which connects the hardware provider with the developers through the API and access to the inference of AI models. So in order for this not to stop and not to stall, this development must continue. The development of both sides, like The technology on the level of the technology on the side of the hardware would be introduction of new models, introduction of new drivers, introduction of new features, introduction of privacy concerned technologies and features. This is on the side of the supply of the hardware provider providing. And then on the other side, developers will be using this and building tools. And
Okay.
if more successful applications, as they mentioned, like something like ChatGPT or like image generation or voice application, agentic applications, all of these applications would need to be built by the developers. And we hope that there will be hundreds and thousands of developers who will be building applications on top of our network using our API in order to create the demand for this network. And if the demand grows, there is a demand and supply mechanics here. And this is sort of a marketplace, an open marketplace, where
Right.
anyone who has the highest efficient hardware to be provided for the network and anyone who want to use it are willing to pay with Gonka coins, with the coins of this network for the API inference, creating this economy of utility token around the network.
All right, so you've got the utility token itself, obviously as kind of the infrastructure for the transaction and the use case of these AI models. You look at the decentralized model, which I think is now starting to be even more accepted because people are figuring out how crypto works, especially as you see some of the centralized models failing, which we have seen multiple times occur. When you look at that, along with kind of just the transition of decentralized infrastructure, now with most of these scenarios with AI, it's all been around centralized infrastructure. What makes you guys feel like, hey, that might work, to a certain extent, but the decentralized model is really the model going forward? Is it primarily power usage and access to the hardware, or is it something more on a philosophical level?
There are two things. First, AI is so powerful tool that it entered our lives and lives of billions of people really fast. And yes, we all like what it brings us, but at the same time, people start to be concerned about the safety, about what actually it can give someone if they control AI.
Right.
And that's what we seen not only not only among professionals. Previously, like 10 years ago, we were part of these discussion groups among scientists who discussed all these issues. But now these issues start to be kind of part of the conversation of regular people who haven't developed AI, but they see how it can affect their lives. And that's created a movement, a reaction. That's what we see with Gonka, that's developing so fast because people react to this really fast.
Right.
They understand that it took too much power to this several organizations and that we need to rebalance this while we can. Yes. And
Decentralization, in a sense, is a necessity rather than so it's a feature itself, the decentralization. So it's decentralizing the power and control. But at the same time, if we're talking about it from the technological point of view, to run a model, you don't need a huge cluster. The model itself fit in a specific smaller cluster of, let's say, 8 GPUs connected with each other with special technologies,
Right.
which allows this GPU cluster to become acting as one. So for one instance of the model, you need only 8 GPUs, let's say. When you have
Okay.
8,000 of them, you have 8,000 of the clusters. Each cluster acts independently, serve developers and users, consumers independently. And in this sense, it's quite rational to think that there is no need to build these clusters all together in order to serve users with access to these models.
Okay.
They can be distributed, except they need to be existing in one point as a cluster, like a large cluster of 8 GPUs, but not of thousands of GPUs.
Okay, I get that. Well, are you concerned, I should say, are people concerned, because this is one of the things that right now everybody's kind of bringing up in a lot of these conversations. I was just listening to some interviews from WEF, and this was being discussed in terms of the security mechanisms? Because obviously with centralized networks and many of these, these clusters that are co-located where we're seeing compute power basically being isolated, when you get into decentralized compute power, is there any security risks that could ride into this? Can you explain how you would battle that?
I think that, and that's what we see in general, not only with AI, but with other spheres of our lives. There are use cases when we need to use centralized solutions.
Yeah.
There are use cases where actually centralized solutions are quite risky. In opposite, we need to create decentralized networks. You're right that in terms of outages or in general in terms of the control, which some can get if they control the entry points to the AI infrastructure. So I think that it's just different type of securities. For sure, in some cases, you would want to have just one actor, counterparty. You deal with one counterparty, and it's clear for you what can go wrong. But at the same time, in many cases, especially when it's public infrastructure, and think about AI not just about as a chat, but about public infrastructure. We consume information, we share the information, we rely on this as a truth. And from this perspective, public infrastructure never worked as centralized. And public infrastructure works much better when it's decentralized, when we all can be sure and trust algorithms that the data which we get is exactly the data which those models were supposed to produce. And that's what the power of blockchains, that you actually can trust. Without trusting one individual, you can trust that what you get from the network is exactly the result which was predicted by your request. And that's what is important with decentralized AI network like Gonka, that every inference is verified. So it's validated. So you can be sure that it's exactly what the model was supposed to produce. And this is the security.
And from the point of personal data, there is no centralized server which stores all this data. There's no servers which actually store this data. And there is no one entry point to hack and get all this data from one place. When we build a decentralized network, no one even can predict where your specific request will be calculated. Like there are servers worldwide, data centers worldwide, currently we're everywhere in Europe, in England, in the United States, in Singapore, in Dubai, like everywhere the data centers which now support Gonka network. And no one can predict which particular GPU cluster will be calculating your individual request. And in this sense, no one can trace this and no one can get the data.
Interesting. Well, that creates privacy. I mean, I can see nation states even looking at this as a tool, especially as it starts to apply a lot of what we're going to see in terms of AI development on advancing the superpowers of the world going forward. That's an intriguing component. Let me ask you this. When you look at the token allocation for the GPU owners, it's, as I saw here on the note, 80% of tokens allocated to host GPU owners. How do you guys balance this to basically ensure kind of the long-term value for investors that are investing in that token?
Yes, so first of all, I think that we're on the stage where it's not about investment. It's about participating in the community and participating in building this grandiose infrastructure. And what we learned from the previous attempts, like most of the attempts before with around decentralized AI, they were built on the principle proof of stake, when most of the rewards are received by stakers, by capital allocators. And it's a nice model for finance. It's a nice model for as an investment tool, but it limited the amount of hardware, amount of GPUs which were connected to these networks, because the main thing is how to build this million GPUs, million ASICs infrastructure. So everything which we need to put into design so that it will happen need to be there. And the fact that most of the rewards, all the daily rewards, are allocated to hardware owners actually create this long-term approach, because hardware owners, they are much more long-term than
Right. Yeah.
the capital allocators.
Sure.
And because they need to see the years of usage, how they amortize these equipments for many months. And that's what creates stability. Also, in
And
the
not
protocol itself,
creating stability, but also the intrinsic value, because there is a hardware behind it and there is an actual cost of
Yeah.
this hardware behind every coin. So every coin which is mined today have the cost of production. And this cost of production is comprised of the total amount of the GPUs, of the hardware inside of the network. So the more hardware in the network, the higher the cost
The value
of
of
every
it. Okay.
single coin, the higher the
Yeah.
value of the coin to be even produced.
imagine that 10,000 GPUs is actually $150 million a year worth of equipment.
Yeah.
Imagine this number. So
Yeah.
when we look at this number and we got to $100 million dollars worth of equipment just in 3 months, and when we look at this, like projects got to $100 million of the volume, maybe usually like startups usually by year
Yeah.
or something like that. In this case, this community were able to bring into to online that amount of equipment just in this short period of time. And as Daniel mentioned, this create the value. Like, we
Right.
don't this network never had airdrops when someone got these coins for free or something like that. It's only like all of them earned and all of them built for utility. And that's what makes in general, these projects to be quite long-term. And it's embedded in all like small decisions. Like, for example, when you mine, you don't get all on the coin immediately. They vested over 6 months.
Okay.
So if you're short-term, you will never join. You will never be part of this network. You need to be long-term in contributing to this network.
A couple of last questions here I wanted to get into before we let you guys go. First is incorporation of AI agents. This is something that we're seeing more and more use case becoming real. Now there's various types of AI agent layers that are being built into many of these large language models today. Anthropic just launched their Copilot, or their coworker, I think it was, that was a new agent that's going out. Then you have, of course, what Perplexity is doing with their agents that are active now, where you can deploy multiples and they can stack and start working with each other. Explain to me, first of all, are you guys going to integrate this into what you guys are doing at Gonka?
It's kind of integrated by default, but
Okay.
we go in with that even further. That's, imagine that currently you only allow agents to maybe browse your internet or filter your emails.
Right.
But it's coming the moment when you will give the access to your accounts and to give the right to transact. At this moment, this verification, which I mentioned, start to be crucial. You want to trust it, that it will do exactly what it should do with your finance, for example.
Sure.
That's what we all get used to already with the DeFi, with smart contracts, that we for sure know that the smart contract will execute exactly what was programmed, so that you don't afraid that your money will be lost. With agents, you need similar quality. You need immutability, which called that no one can affect. No one can affect your transactions, which are performed by this agent. They exactly perform what it was supposed to do based on the language model which run the agents. So we believe that
technicality, and then a little bit of the technicality, is what we provide is the bottom layer. Like all of these companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini, XAI, they do provide the API layer access for the developers. Like, for example, Perplexity themselves, they use the API layer of other AI providers, like Anthropic or OpenAI or Gemini, like all of them. So basically, Perplexity come up as an idea, what if we will just basically orchestrate in between all of the existing models and use the best from all of them, and then build our own layer on top of this. So
Okay.
what Gonka is just one of the bottom base layers of AI, of like API access for developers to use this. Whether it's for the agentic systems or for any other specific use cases, this is sort of like an infrastructure layer which everyone can use.
Yeah, okay, well that makes more sense, I think, especially as we see use case going into it. I'm glad you guys explained how the token value, especially from a utility aspect, really starts to accelerate based on the participation side. Last question for you guys is, when you look at just the compute platforms that we've seen, in the crypto side of things, whether you look at BitTense or Render, a handful, Filecoin, et cetera, that have had different models of use case, do you think there will be use cases like those being built on top of Gonka, or will you guys see more competitive elements that might rise out of the development of what you guys are doing to compete with projects like that?
I think that each of the projects, they have their unique structure, the unique protocol, which drives the direction of the project. Like, for example, Bitanzar, which you mentioned, it's built around proof of stake.
Right.
It created some advantages, but it also led to some disadvantages when the amount of GPUs in the network is quite limited. Even though the project exists for 4 years, it was the most prominent project in decentralized AI field, but amount of GPUs, high-end data center grade GPUs in Gonka network already like a couple times larger than what Bitanzar were able to achieve. I still think that different projects will coexist, and different projects will have their own markets, and kind of the same with Render, the same with different projects which right now targeted, for example, AI training, like Prime Intellect or Gensyn. We see this as ecosystem. What Gonka is aimed to build is this massive infrastructure. And to build the massive infrastructure, we believe that the protocol set in the right way to get to this millions of GPUs, millions of H100 GPUs. That's what you need in protocol. You need proof of work, and that's what is missing in these other protocols. So everyone will have their own kind of path and journey. We hope that actually a lot of projects which right now built around decentralized training will use Gonka as infrastructure.
Oh, okay.
And that it's actually that we more into collaboration with all these different ecosystem rather than to competition, especially seeing that in terms of amount of GPUs in the network, we don't have any competition.
Gotcha.
And that's where the focus of the protocol will be for foreseeable future.
Very good. Hey, Daniil and David, thank you so much for coming in today. Of course, we've learned a lot about where maybe decentralized compute is going to be going. We'll be following what you guys are doing at Gonka. So thanks for stopping in.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.